says it. I usually wait till the end, and then somebody says, "Yeah, you sound Canadian. It's the boots," and then I get upset. And so we'll just get out of the way. Thanks for joining me, Aiden. How are you doing? Where are you coming to me from?
I'm doing great. I'm joining you from Washington, D.C.
Oh, beautiful, the now much safer DC. I hope.
Very true.
Very good. I wanted to ask you about these GPS stories that I've been made aware of. This stuff about Chinese manufacturing, all stuff that is very much interesting to me and to our slash my slash they them's audience. And let me just start off by asking you: is there an issue with Russia interfering with people's GPS signals? And I believe what I read is it pertains to, commercial flights over the region. And what I also read is that they're doing it because they want to protect their own land, I guess you could call it, against potential Ukrainian drone attacks. How much of that is true? What can you tell people about this topic?
Well, what I can say is that we know that the Russians jammed GPS, presumably to protect their own territory. I guess I couldn't talk specifically to if they're worried about Ukrainian drones, but in the war there are GPS dead zones in the battlefield. Even in the Baltics, the commercial flights in Sweden and Finland and that general region will run into issues because of GPS interference by the Russians. The North Koreans do it too. Basically, all of the main adversaries, so to speak, of the United States in some way or another practice GPS jamming, whether it's Iran going after bases and things like that. It's a pretty consistent theme across the board. Um, in the report that we wrote and published recently, we basically outline all the different ways that China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea have built a layer of redundancy to GPS because they know that the United States and a lot of our Western allies are kind of uniquely vulnerable right now. We rely a lot on the satellite signals, satellite GPS, but in their own countries, they've been using some older technologies, some Cold War era technologies, and then newer terrestrial technologies to make sure that they're not vulnerable to the same kind of attacks that we are. And so what we've been talking about basically is building a GPS backup here in the United States at home, and presumably at some point it would expand across the Western world as well, to make sure that if for whatever reason there's a freak solar storm or an attack on our satellites or an EMP, our GPS, our reliance on GPS will end up fine. Right now, all of our military technologies use it. All of our commercial applications use it. Google Maps, Apple Maps, Uber. I mean, if our GPS system was taken down in any particular way, it would be devastating across the board.
What can the U.S. agencies do to protect against this? Is there some sort of technology that they should shift, like parallel to, or come up with something new? Is there something that the Space Force is involved in? Because I know a lot of the reason that was, brought about under the first administration was to get ahead of some of the stuff that China was doing. What can anybody can anything be done or shifted towards in order to stop such a threat?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, the Federal Communications Commission under Chairman Brendan Carr has been working towards solving this issue. They have a notice of proposed rulemaking and a couple other areas that they're looking into building out a GPS backup. Like I said, there are some older technologies that could feasibly be a backup in some way or another. But what we really been pushing for is actually a newer terrestrial version that we can put on top of our current cell tower infrastructure. The main debate there is it's just the technicalities of the engineering and figuring out which product is the best, which product reduces or has the least interference with existing technologies, and basically which is the most viable and economical over the long run. We're pretty confident that the Federal Communications Commission is going in the right direction. I mean, even Senator Cruz has talked about needing a GPS backup. This is a very live issue in DC. A lot of our work has been focused on rooting out the Chinese interests actually in this issue. As you would expect, there are a lot of Chinese companies that are members in trade associations in Washington, D.C., that actually actively lobby the federal government and agencies to do or not do certain things, make certain decisions. And there's a whole section in our report where we just outline all these conflicts of interests in associations like this group called the Z Wave Alliance. And they have as one of their members, one of their major members, a company called the ZTE Corporation. And this company, the ZTE Corporation, is actually on a list of the on the FCC's website of a covered entity, which is a company that poses a national security threat. And this association with this company as a member is actively going to the FCC and saying not to adopt terrestrial backup technologies for our GPS system, which is a pretty blatant conflict of interest there.
Mm-hmm. And something I would ask you based on that, and something I think a lot of people would like to know, is what does that sort of influence look like in a city like DC? Is that just, people going to private meetings with some of these companies or some of these people that are from China that are trying to influence them? Is it all behind closed doors? Or are you able to see, I assume it's not illegal for somebody to have a conversation. Do they just walk up to these people in plain sight and say, "This is what I want to do. I don't want you to change or affect these vulnerabilities that are already in place"? What does that sort of thing look like for, I'll just say that it's probably along the verge of spying, quote unquote, Your Honor, conjecture, hearsay. But what does that look like in 2025 to a regular person?
Well, as far as the actual proceedings, the majority of it is public information, right? I mean, the association members and company leaders and government affairs professionals, so they'll go and they'll meet with staff and they'll make their case and present the materials, and then whenever the agency opens up public comment, then you get a whole flood of information, right? Most of this information comes from companies and associations that are active in the industry space, which is totally to be expected, including engineering reports and all this technical information. But fundamentally, they're making their intentions known, right? This is not secret. It's not some arcane lobbying, endeavor to hurt America. It's all out in the open. Nobody just nobody talks about it. So when we started talking about it, it pissed a lot of them off, and then they started scrubbing information from their websites, linking them to all of these Chinese companies. It's blatant, it's open, and that's why groups like ours at the Bull Moose Project were actually very active in these comments, in these filings, to make the case to ignore certain associations, ignore certain companies, because we already know that they're connected to the CCP or they're connected to companies that we already know pose national security risks.
Yeah, and I want you to talk about the bull moose so that people know where you're coming from. And if people go online and look at the website or the X account, they will see very pro-America stuff. I'll call it old-timey imagery that, evokes a positive feeling of a different time from people. Tell me how that started, or your involvement with it started, and how do you go about choosing which topics you want to cover like this with the GPS stuff?
We started the Bull Moose Project back in the spring of 2021, actually, when things were kind of uncertain on where the Republican Party was going to go. We started because we wanted to be a voice for this more populist conservatism that Donald Trump brought to life in the conservative movement in 2015. We were the original group of people who started were very young. I am in my mid 20s right now, and we did not have any DC connections. We didn't have any money, nothing like that. It was just pure MAGA, pure populist conservatism that kind of drove us to start this whole thing. We got to DC, and our mission statement is to advocate for a dominant American future. And so we cover a broad range of policy areas that vary month to month on what's in the news or what are the major things happening in Congress or the administration. In this particular issue, we thought it was important to lend a voice because Americans don't know how to live without GPS now. Like I said before, it powers everything, and we're in this era of global competition with China. We're seeing wars break out in Europe, which hasn't happened in generations. I mean, it is very, very important on both an economic and a military level, national security level, that we're prepared to meet the challenges of the future. And having this backup is part of that. And what we don't want is we don't want CCP companies to artificially delay this progress to serve their own interests.
How do you get people your age and men and women younger than you to care about these issues? Because I do see an increased fervor, I'll call it, amongst the 20 somethings in this sort of things. They're not putting up with certain things anymore. They're not staying silent about certain government programs anymore, or government positions, really. How do you or your team go about, maybe you just bring it up in a conversation? How would you convince somebody who's around your age or younger to care about something like this?
Well, I'll tell you that younger people our age reach out basically every day asking how they can get involved. And we don't have local chapters or anything of the sort, and so we don't directly engage them. But I think younger Americans, especially younger conservatives, are kind of sick and tired of feeling like we're behind the eight ball on the world stage and at home. They feel like the same kind of sentiment that drove Donald Trump to victory in 2016 and in 2024, where America has just kind of stagnated. That they're tired of that. They want to actually have a positive vision for the future. And so when you look on our social media and you see these old time images, we mix it up with some of the early 20th century when America was really booming, and we include also modern technologies. We include, I think, just the other day, a photo of some of our stealth bombers flying past the Washington Monument. This is it's more aspirational. It's civilizational. People want to feel like they're part of a big project. And so we go to younger conservatives, especially on college campuses, and we talk about policy, and we talk about how to make America great again. But fundamentally, we're pulling them into this broader project to rebuild America for themselves and for their future families as well.
Particularly younger women, how do you feel they've responded to this type of outreach? Because from what I've seen, younger conservative women are really positive about, making things a bit simpler. And I don't mean this in any sort of way that somebody will clip this and twist it into, but I mean, like, they're pretty pro family. They're pretty pro, America. They're pretty pro, just moving forward as a country and getting everybody on the same page. Have you noticed any sort of shift in the way, young conservative women are coming out to these things and expressing themselves on these ideas? Or has that been, remained generally the same since the election, since 2020? Because I know in the last election, Trump increased his standing with pretty much every major group, and that included young women.
I would say it's probably generally the same. But what I can say is that younger people in general, younger men, younger women, they want to have a secure future, right? And
Mm-hmm.
something that Blake Masters was saying when he ran for Senate a few years ago is we want people to have the option to raise a family on a single income if they should so choose, right? We don't want people to feel obligated to practice a family model that really isn't in everyone's best interest, right? Many people, the husband goes to work, the wife goes to work, their kids are with a babysitter all day, or they're in pre-K all day, and they don't actually spend time with their kids. Many people don't want that. Many younger women don't want that. Many younger men don't want that. And for us, it's really about creating a domestic environment at home where you don't have to do that if you don't want to.
Have you faced any backlash since you've been involved with these organizations, especially in D.C.? I'd have to imagine, you're very close to where all the journalists and all the writers and all the White House press pool is. Has there been any criticisms of the topics you've chosen to pioneer, or is it like this GPS one, not something that somebody really approaches and knows how to argue with?
I mean, there's always pushback on this report in particular. We had pushback from some of the associations that we had talked about, including one association who whose president lives in England and who 3/4 of whom the board member are not American, trying to claim that we are not America first, which falls really flat on its face for anybody who's familiar with the Bull Moose Project. But fundamentally, I do think, and you can argue whether or not this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I do think DC realizes that MAGA's in charge, and you have to speak it. You have to learn what that actually means in order to get things done. So even for people who don't like the Bull Moose Project, don't like me and what we work on, there's not a whole lot of direct talk, although I do hear things.
That's very interesting that you say they need to learn to speak it and they know that who's in charge now. So that to me is sort of like they know that they're going to have to be able to a degree get along with a lot of the people there if they want to make any progress. Is that from the side of the media or the side from politicians or from everybody, do you think?
I think everybody's figuring it out, and that's also, I would say, one of the challenges of President Trump's movement is figuring out, what does MAGA mean, what do the cues mean, and really finding or pointing out the people who try to manipulate it, right, for their own personal benefit. Like I said, we've had criticism on this issue from people that are not American that try to say that this particular policy that we're pushing is not America first. That does not really make sense. And there are plenty of other examples like it, but fundamentally, they have to work within this new dichotomy in DC. And I think we've been seeing a lot of progress.
With one of the things I thought of when I was going through the Bull Moose documentations and their press on the website was I was thinking with the end of USAID, and I believe their office was just recently closed permanently, and the programs along with it. What would you say to somebody criticizing you or the administration about saying what we're going to get in reverse is like NGOs and different corporations in the opposite direction, and there's potential for overreach there, or like, bloating there? And this is, I'm coming from you from a guy who probably agrees with you on 99% of things, just so we're clear on that. But I want to get your thought, like, because I think that at some point, and you probably think about this too, at some point you kind of just have to say I'm correct or I'm right after 10 years of being called like all these names that they call people like us. Do you ever think about, or ever question yourself and think about, like, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right direction I want to go in? Is that something you ever struggle with, or something that you kind of have to convince yourself of? Or has it become so clear to you based on recent history that this is just what is required?
I haven't questioned myself once. I know we're doing the things that need to be done. I do think that there are discussions to be had, over the long term of what exactly we want to be doing, what the long term goals are. But look, what's been happening in the administration is necessary. It's necessary for a couple different reasons, but fundamentally, I think this project is about refocusing the government on projects that can actually carry out, that it can actually deliver on for the American people. And so you have to cut a lot of waste. You have to cut a lot of abuse. That's not to say that we should never build things. In fact, I do think we should be building institutions, but we should be promoting a government agenda that is proactive, that actually has the capacity to accomplish things. There's a couple ways to do that, but fundamentally, I think what MAGA wants is they don't want a government that is massive, right? I think the principles of having a smaller government are still there for the majority of people. The argument is really, how do we make the government effective and efficient?
Yeah, I would agree. And I wanted to ask you as well, who has reached out to you, and what type of support have you received from people in the MAGA movement? Have you been able to connect, officially or unofficially, with any of the congressmen and women in Washington? Have any, media members or people from different organizations reached out and been like, what, let's work on this together? Tell me how that's been going for you.
Yeah, we've had a lot of support in DC. There is a very strong and growing contingent of MAGA in Congress, which we're very pleased to see. But many of these organizations, these conservative organizations, they want to work with us because we do represent a younger voice in American politics. We represent younger college students and 20 to 30-year-olds that are going to play a role in politics. They're going to staff the government for the next 20, 30, 40 years. And we've been able to find a unique place for ourselves in Washington. We've been able to add a younger, more aggressive voice that's not afraid, to call balls and strikes. And I think we've had a great reception so far.
Something I wrote down that I wanted to ask you was about the Chinese-made equipment and the supply chains around that. Can you be more specific about that? Is this in relation to the technology around the GPS, or is that something separate?
I think it's slightly a separate issue, but I mean the FCC has kind of been tackling a couple different things at once, which is fundamentally we keep discovering Chinese or unauthorized Chinese equipment in a lot of our telecommunications devices.
That's good. What kind
Yeah,
of devices?
well, I I don't know if they publicly said. My guess would be listening equipment of some kind.
Mm.
Brendan Carr, the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, is rooting out this on the national level. Like the covered list, which is something that they've been working on, which covers ZTE, one of the corporations that have been advocating against this 5G backup. Um,
Hmm.
that covered list places more restrictions on these companies, and I don't believe it allows them to bring products inside the United States because we don't trust the equipment that's being manufactured overseas. So rest assured, Brendan Carr is working to solve this problem. He's actually been making tremendous progress so far.
In your opinion, do you think we would be better off just having, almost nothing? I'm just going to assume that there's got to be some things that we have to trade with China that we don't have. But are you of the opinion that we should probably cut off most things? Is there certain things that you know of that we do need to trade with China about? Because after COVID, and it became clear that they control most of the pharmaceuticals, and they're right next to Taiwan, and now the government's trying to shift away, making all the chips there. I think it's up to about 12% or something like that in the U.S. Is there something that you think that we need from China? Or are you personally, your personal opinion, do you think that it's time we cut off a lot of the ties?
I mean, look, I personally, I think we need to decouple as much as possible from China. There is a pretty big debate right now on how long that might take. Um, Theoretically, the administration could try and cut everything off tomorrow, and that probably wouldn't be very good in the short term. I think what the administration has been doing to bring back investments to the United States, uh, encourage companies to open up more facilities here. I think we've been on a pretty steady pace to start decoupling our industries. TSMC, they're opening up fabs in Arizona. They're starting to bring more of their advanced chips back into the U.S. for production. So we are making progress. I do think that is the ultimate goal that we need to pursue, um, but it's not going to happen tomorrow.
So can you please outline what are your immediate goals for this? You mentioned wanting to cut off the certain companies that you believe are, trying to do the opposite of what you're trying to
Mhm.
do. What's the, let's say, 3 to 6 months? What are you hoping happens next with
Well,
your involvement in it? Sorry, go ahead.
now, with this backup, basically what we need is for the Federal Communications Commission to proceed with their proposed rulemaking. It is the role of this agency to test the technologies and the engineering. There, like I mentioned before, there's a lot of debate between these companies on the specifics of the technology and whether it's beneficial or not. That's something that the FCC, once it moves forward, will be able to do. They do field tests to determine whether or not this rule is worth moving forward with. And that's what we want. We want the FCC to move forward. We want them to test this technology. We're confident that it will be a really good way to develop a GPS backup in this country because of this specific technology that they're looking at, we can actually build it out without any kind of government involvement. No government subsidies. It can be done completely through the private sector because they're basically just adding additional pieces of equipment to our cell towers.
Hmm.
So it kind of with the general 5G rollout across the country, that's what we build on top of. doesn't need government investment, which I know some conservatives are concerned about. So if they move forward and they test this technology and they're happy with it, then that will be a huge step forward.
Well, I think it's a good idea. I think, I've spoken to a lot of people in the defense industry over the last year, I'll say, and they have made a lot of strides with this administration in advancing and bringing certain sectors up to speed. And in particular, one person I spoke to focused on, defensive capabilities of the United States. And that's something that's been, largely ignored, he said, under Biden and under the Democrats. So I think it's important to look at things like this and to actually do something about it while the power of the government is still there. And Aiden, I'm out of mostly serious questions for you. Is Jimmy Kimmel funny enough to stay on the air? You're Italian, he's Italian. Is there a conflict there? Do you have a favorite late night host?
He is not funny enough.
Correct.
And I've got to say, I think we should maybe cancel all the late night programs. None of them are funny.
It's correct. None of them have really made me laugh in a serious, actual wanting to watch them manner, I think, in probably a decade. I think Conan O'Brien was the last one I found funny before, he went on TBS. That's another issue. How do you feel about Saturday Night Live? Should that be taken off?
Probably. I've got to be honest. I don't watch it, so I don't know what what they find funny anymore. It's probably not the same as what I would think.
What does Aiden Buzzetti watch? What are his go-to shows? I know you had Women in the Room. Is there some Married at First Sight going on? Is there any other TLC general shows, some slop, we'll call it, anything like that?
Oh, that's a tough one. All right, this is gonna sound terrible, but I've been watching the Theodore Roosevelt miniseries, which is like kind of embarrassingly on brand. Yeah, outside of that, I watched a slop show called it was like called The Frontier or something, and they took a bunch of like a couple families and they made them reenact life on the frontier and like fix a log cabin and grow food and stuff. That's actually like really funny. It's a really good show.
I don't think that's as embarrassing as it could be. Like, you could have just been like, the latest season of Naked and Afraid came out. They're nakeder, they're more afraid. I think that's how they marketed the last one. I think it was like, they're more naked and they're more afraid on Naked and Afraid this year. So thank you for divulging that, even humanizing yourself. It's hard for me to keep the seriousness within me for the entire duration of the podcast. But is there anything else you wanted to mention about the stuff that you guys are working on?
I would say if you want to stay updated on the issues that we're talking about, you can go to bullmooseproject.org, or you can go to our X account, which posts really, really good aesthetics at bullmoose, PROJ, bullmoose proj.
All right. I'm thankful for you for talking to me about the GPS stuff. It is really interesting to me, and I know people, they should be more aware of this stuff, and because, one flick of the switch and everybody goes crazy. When the lights go out, is what they say. Society will crumble. Yep. So if I can't get to where I'm going with my GPS, if I don't know when the food is getting to my door, I might snap, Aiden. I'm not going to lie.
Society would collapse.
All right, thanks. I appreciate everything you're doing. Keep up the good work. Have a good day, okay?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
No problem.